who marched to the beat of his own drum, who didn't always necessarily conform to societal expectations. And yet, at Theatre Passe Muraille, there was a home, there was space for Bob. To me, that's an extraordinary legacy, an important reminder, an important touchstone that for Theatre Passe Muraille, for everyone, whoever has to hold leadership or stewardship of this organization, to always be reminded to find space, to continue to welcome those that may be different, who may think differently, who may operate differently, that may not have a home elsewhere, that the theater can be that place. That is what we want for Theatre Passe Muraille. So in that spirit, Bob, welcome home. Thank you so much. I don't have anything else to say except you are welcome to go into the backspace if you just want to have a look to see a different configuration and to visit the portrait that's outside of the backspace. Thank you.
This is Reg Hartt, and I'm speaking to you from my home in the Cineforum in Toronto, Canada. And I'm going to talk to you today about my friend Bobby Naismith, who passed away of cancer a couple of years ago. And I first met Bobby at Rochdale College in Toronto, 1970. Now, I'm going to assume that you know nothing about Rochdale College. So before I go any further talking about Bobby, I'm going to tell you about Rochdale College. Rochdale College opened its doors in Toronto in 1968. It began as an 18-floor student high-rise created by Campus Co-op. Along the way, the people who created Rochdale got the idea that if they made it into an experiment and alternate education, they could get their break on get a break on taxes. So they conjured up an idea that at Rochdale there would be no teachers. Each Rochdalian was called to be our own teacher. Now they brought in people who'd achieved success in different fields to be what they called resource people. These were people who were there, they were able to live free of rent-free, their food costs were covered, everything was covered. The only thing they had to do was not teach, but to speak with any person who wanted to speak with them. Now, I knew nothing about Rochdale when I first heard about Rochdale. I had some people that had come to a program I did at the time. I had a little venue at the end of Yorkville on Yonge Street above a pool hall. It was 39 steps above the pool hall. I could have called the venue the 39 Steps after the film that established Alfred Hitchcock, but I called it The Public Enemy after the film that made Jimmy Cagney a star. I had an intuitive knack for the right course. Years later, reading Henry Miller's excellent essay, An Open Letter to Surrealists Everywhere, I read from Miller, whenever an English artist of any value arises, he is seen as public enemy number one. Now, public enemies do not apply for government funding. I mean, they may rob banks, but they don't apply for government funding. And these people came out they said they were from Rochdale College, and that meant nothing to me. But they told me about a woman at Rochdale whose name rang bells loud and clear. And that name was the name of Judith Merrill. Judy edited the year's best collections of science fiction. The stories that she chose were first rate. Her brief introductions to those stories were even better. So I was 22, pre-punk, rail thin, weighed 125 pounds, was dressed head to foot in black and filled with passionate intensity. I went over to Rochdale to meet Judy, and 30 years later, over a beer at a bar up the street when she was just recovering from a heart attack, she told me that she had decided to limit her acquaintances and time down to people who really mattered to her, and I learned that I was one of the ones who really mattered to her, which was a hell of an honor. And that was Rochdale. Now, Judy told me, you belong here. And I said, what's here? And she explained the idea that each Rochdalian was called to be their own teacher. And I had just started studying the Wilhelm Baines edition of the I Ching in 1968, and it teaches that learning and doing must be one, otherwise both are dead. It also teaches that the superior man works for neither kings nor princes. That meant if you take this seriously, you don't go looking for an employer. I looked at it seriously and thought, this is going to be interesting. So since 1968, I have consciously not had an employer. The I Ching teaches that if we trust what's in us, we become the center of the cosmos. Well, what choice have you got but to trust what's in you anyway? If you don't, you're screwed. So anyway, Rochdale College seemed to embody all the ideas I was thinking about as a result of reading the I Ching. And I started showing films there. And I dropped my first hit of acid there in 1968, in September. But my father's brother, Douglas Hart, was Director General of Public Works Canada under Pierre Trudeau. He was responsible for the development of Harbourfront and a great many things like that. And he invited me to live with him in Ottawa. So, I went to Ottawa and lived there for a year. And then at the end of that year, I came back to Toronto, and I briefly ran a couple of films at Rochdale. And then I got invited out to Hollywood, California by a friend of mine. And I had a dream about Elvis Presley and Yellow Brick Road the night before. And I went to Hollywood. I had only a Toronto Public Library card for identification. And when I got to Hollywood, I was there for about a month. I got stopped by a police officer who, when he saw my Toronto Public Library card, said, "What did you do in Toronto?" I said, "I showed films at Rochdale College." He said, "You mean Canada's Communist Training Center?" And I said to myself, my God, if the cops in Hollywood, the single most out-of-touch place on earth, know about Rochdale College, Rochdale must be the hippest place on earth. I'm wasting my time here. So determined to come back to Toronto ASAP, and I got back to Toronto a week later and arrived in Rochdale College to find a tiny perfumed letter from the film star Mae West waiting for me. And I spoke with Rochdale's then president, Peter Turner, who I'd met when I first met Judith Merrill, and I said, "I want to be part of this." He said, "What can you do?" I said, "I can give you a film program." And Peter said, "Then you're director of cinema studies." So I became Rochdale's director of cinema studies, and they had no money. So I said, "I don't need any money. Just give me the space." And as a result of that, by that time, Bobby Naismith had come on board. And Bobby was known for dropping his clothes at the drop of a feather on the wind. Now, the aspect of Rochdale College that was most attractive to people who went there was because of the nature of the experiment in self-education. The authorities were persuaded to allow the use of hashish, LSD, mescaline, marijuana, and peyote. I like to say that Rochdale was 18 floors, and the higher up you went, the higher you got. And when you got to the 18th floor, which was the roof and the sun deck, our clothes fell off. So if you can imagine 1968 in Toronto being part of an experiment where you're called to be your own teacher, and you've got people of genuine substance there as resource people, like Judith Merrill, the mother of modern science fiction, and you can smoke weed and smoke hashish and do marijuana, do mescaline, do peyote, and drop LSD. You're talking about something incredible, incredibly wonderful. And for a time it was. Now, when I came back to Toronto in 1970 from Hollywood, the dream had burst. All those people that had come there to be resource people discovered that the dream had turned into, in their eyes, a nightmare. This was because one person decided to take the locks off all the doors. He was somebody who had swallowed the Marxist ideological line, hook, line, and sinker. And all you need is people to swallow a line, hook, line, and sinker, whether it's Marxism or Christianity or Buddhism or Sun Wuism or whatever you want to name it. People who swallow a line without thinking are fanatics. And he's still a fanatic. And in the film Dream Tower, which is the worst film you can see on Rochdale, I mean, it gives you a good idea of their prehistory, but it's the worst film you can see on the subject of Rochdale College. He speaks about how there was no education program at Rochdale and it was all a farce. Well, no. No. When you're called to be our own teacher, that's not a farce. Like I said, Isaac Asimov said self-education is the only form of education. John Taylor Gatto got an award twice, New York State Teacher of the Year. He's now doing everything he can to keep young people out of school because our school system is based on the Austrian model, which is designed to create slaves. Don't argue with me. Go get a copy of John Taylor Gatto's book, Underground History of American Education. Read it and then argue with me if you want to, but argue from an informed position. Until you've done that, please shut up. Well, Rochdale was incredible, and the people were incredible, and the sex was incredible. Everything about it was incredible. And Bobby was the living embodiment of Rochdale. I mean, the man walked around naked as much as possible, and he got a lot of people upset because he had a very physically attractive body. So men who thought themselves straight would look at Bobby and get a hard-on. Women would look at Bobby and think, my God, he's got more than my husband has. And when you got it, flaunt it, and Bobby flaunted it. Anyway, I had left Rochdale because in around 1971 because a drug dealer decided to open a fine dining restaurant in the space I used to show films and give my talks. And most people at Rochdale, oh, there goes Reg. There goes Reg. Well, there goes Reg. You got to listen to Reg. Well, one of my Rochdale regulars was Jane Jacobs, who wrote The Death and Life of Great American Cities. She's the most important writer on cities. Her last book, published in 2004, before she died in 2006, was called Dark Age Ahead. Everyone said she was wrong. Well, we now know that she was right. Of course, when The Death and Life of Great American Cities came out, everyone said she was wrong when that came out. Then they realized after a while, no, she knows what she's talking about. Why does she know what she's talking about? Because unlike the academics, the professors, and the rest, she didn't sit on her ass and have someone do their legwork. She did her own legwork. She used her own eyes and ears and her own senses. And Jane said that she had great teachers in the first and second grade who taught her everything I know. After that, the teachers were nice, but they were dopes. Well, this isn't about Jane Jacobs, it's about Bobby Naismith, but the thing is, the Rochdale story is so rich that it's so important to know about it that I'm going to have to devote a whole talk to Rochdale. But I want to keep this on Bobby, because we're remembering Bobby. Anyway, this drug dealer had taken out a hit on me. I heard he had taken out a hit. I couldn't believe it. I thought, that's stupid. There's a reason why they call it dope. It makes people dopes. And I went up into Rochdale to visit a friend, and lo and behold, a whole lot of people look in that room talking about something they didn't want me to know about. So I got the wind pretty clear. I came back downstairs, finished my film. Fellow shows up and says to me, I'm taking a trip around the world. I said, oh, He says, yeah. He says, I'm going to take movies of it. I want you to show them to the people. Where do I send them? So I said, send them to the office, I'll get them. He goes, no, I want you to get them. I said, no, send them to the office, I'll get them. And I played them for about half an hour. Then I gave him an address outside the building, and that night I packed up my projector and my films and all my gear, and that was the last time I showed films at Rochdale. I started showing outside the building. And time passed, and I got a phone call from a fellow in the motion picture industry who asked me if I knew where to get a copy of the movie Deep Throat, which the New York police had made famous by busting. And I said, I haven't got a clue. Who wants that? It's about a woman with her clitoris in her throat. Linda Lovelace was the star. Look it up on the web. Deep Throat. I said, I haven't got a clue. Who wants it? Well, he named who wants it. Well, Rochdale had gone into receivership, and the people who wanted it were the people now in charge of Rochdale. I'm not going to name them, because if I name them, they can sue me, and I don't need the aggravation, but if you do your own work, you can find out. So anyway, they paid for it, and they got it. They had to get it. I got it back, and they wanted, invoices and everything, so I had it clear on paper that, they paid for it. And I thought, well, you can't charge the people for something that the oppressors paid for and paid, but if you give it to people for free, they won't enjoy it. They got to think that they're robbing you. So I made the admission for the program $10, but you got in free because if you came in naked. So naturally, everybody came in naked. One person gave me $10 anyway, as a donation. And then I found out from the police, because I hadn't charged admission, the screening was actually legal. It only became illegal when you charged money for it. So then I ran Deep Throat, and I did what I called the Wet Dreams Film Festival at Rochdale, and it was all free. You had to be a member, private, that kept the public out, and it was all inside the law. And I had different people working as my projectionist, and Bobby Naismith, God bless him, was one of my projectionists. So here's Bobby, running the movie stark naked, and in comes a world-famous personality, Xaviera Hollander. She's famous as being what was called the happy hooker. She had had sex with a number of prominent heads of states, and they had paid fortunes for the pleasure of her pleasure. And she took one look at Bobby Naismith, and like many people who had looked at Bobby Naismith, she saw what she wanted. And she wanted it right there and right then. And Bobby, by God, let her have it right there and right then. That was Bobby. He was the living embodiment of everything that was great about Rochdale College. And we were good friends. Well, Rochdale was shut down. It was actually murdered by the Toronto Sun, because the Toronto Sun wrote stories about the sex and drugs at Rochdale College. And they had just started up, and they needed the cause to sell papers, and they needed the scandal to sell papers, and they decided to go after Rochdale. Well, the result of all of this hysteria in the Sun, and then other papers picked it up, was that it became what they said it was. And people were drawn to Rochdale not to be their own teachers, not for the great challenge of being our own teacher, but to party. There's nothing wrong with those folks who want to party, let them party. But the problem was that once you got rid of that aspect of it, to be your own teacher part of it, the educational part of it, the foundation for everything else just simply eroded completely. It wasn't there. So it fell apart. And I was in Rochdale during one of the raids, and it was horrendous. I had a police officer pointing his gun right between my eyes, scared stiff by what he'd read and heard in the media. And can't blame him for that. That's the mass media hysteria. A young Russian said to me, in our country we had an iron curtain and we knew it. In this country you have an iron curtain of the soul and you don't know it. I said, you're right. Most of them don't know it and don't want to know it. And that's the truth. But anyway, the next day in the media there were great stories of all the drugs and stuff that had been seized at Rochdale College. And this was bullshit. So I called the people I knew in the media and told them, this is not what's going on here. It's just people over here to take a look. And they all ignored me. And one woman said, you have to understand, there's a way we have to report stories that come out of Rochdale College. I said, you telling me there's a media line on Rochdale? And then I realized in that instant that all across the boards, most of our national media and local media are lying sons of bitches and can't be trusted. So to hell with them. But, time moves on. We all move along with it. And I'm sitting here in the Cineforum right now. And I was up walking around the city putting up flyers for my programs one day a few years ago. And I ran into Bobby. And Bobby walked along with me and we talked. And he let slip that he was living on the street homeless. I said, what? He said, no, I have no money. I've got no place to live. I said, well, then come with me. He said, I told you I've got no money. I said, I know that. Come with me. So then I helped him get on social assistance, and social assistants called me and said, do you know what kind of person you're bringing in there? I said, yeah, I do. I know. So they helped him. A lot of folks say they're Christians. Well, a lot of folks say they're Christians are full of shit. In the Last Judgment, the Lord says to those on his right, You saw me homeless. You saw me hungry. You saw me thirsty. You saw me naked. You saw me sick. You saw me a jailbird. You saw me a stranger. And you helped me. They go, when did we help you? He says, when you helped the least of these, my brothers and sisters who helped me. Now come on in. And to those on the left, he says, you saw me hungry. You saw me thirsty. You saw me homeless. You saw me naked. You saw me sick. You saw me a jailbird. You saw me a stranger. You passed me by. They go, when did we pass by you? He says, when you pass by the least of these, my brothers and sisters, you pass by me. Now, that's pretty goddamn clear, don't you think? I mean, come on, let's take a look at that. Now, I don't call myself a Christian, but whenever I see a chance to help people, I do. And I'm well aware that I'm one of the blackest sinners ever lived, man. I was curious, and I tried everything, and if I didn't like it at first, I tried it again and again to make sure that maybe I'd got it wrong the first time. So I am a hardened sinner. I am the worst kind of sinner, and I'm told that the Lord loves great sinners. Well, I'm a great sinner. And the reason the Lord loves great sinners is because those forgiven much love much, and those forgiven little love little. And right now we're in a pain in the ass time. We've got too many people who've sinned little, and thus they love little. And they're all going to go straight to fucking hell, because who can stand them? Not even God. Leave them to the devil, because he's their father anyway. So I moved Bobby in. And Bobby is a prince among human beings, and the people who were living here were inspired by him, and he inspired them. He put a magic carpet under their feet. He made their souls soar. It was absolutely the most beautiful gift you could ever hope to receive. And then when he reached the point where he was strong enough and able to go on his own, he left here and he flew. And he did incredible things. He started to really get his feet on the ground and let his soul expand. And it was a great soul. And the bigger it expanded, the more it embraced. In his final years, dying of cancer, never for once crying, why me, why me? D.H. Lawrence has a poem called Self-Pity. It's very short. He goes, I never saw a wild thing feel sorry for itself. The small bird will drop frozen dead from the bough of the tree without ever once having said sorry, felt sorry for itself. And that was Bobby. He was the wild thing. Magnificent wild thing. Magnificent, magnificent, magnificent wild thing. You couldn't hope for better. And he did an amazing performance of Krapp's last tape. Google Bobby Naismith and Krapp's last tape for the reviews. Just amazing. And social assistant said to me, do you know what kind of person you're bringing in? Yeah, I knew what kind of person I was bringing in. I was bringing in an angel, an absolute angel, a fallen angel, wounded by his foes, who needed a place to heal. And when he healed, he flew. And he flew magnificently. And God, how can you not love a person like that? This is my memory of my great friend Bobby Naismith, which I'm sharing with you. I wasn't able to share it today because when I got there I discovered you had to call them up in advance and let them know you wanted to speak. And quite frankly, most of those folks wouldn't want to hear me speak because I'd start to speak and they go, there goes Reg. And let them. Because the problem with Rochdale College wasn't the sex, it wasn't the drugs, it wasn't all of that. It was the fact that too few of them took seriously the idea of being our own teacher. And you don't need Rochdale College to be your own teacher. You don't need marijuana. You don't need hashish. You don't need LSD. You don't need mescaline. You don't need peyote. Although if you want to do those things, go ahead and do them. All you need is a firm determination to be the best you can possibly be. The name of God in English, we're told in the King James Bible, is I am that I am. And the short form is I am. Now, I met a minister who told me that the full translation of I am that I am is I am that I am becoming. Or more perfectly now, I will be that I will be. I will define myself, is what it means. And you, my friends, young and old, have to become God in your own life. You have to decide to define yourself. Bobby Naismith was a God. And gods are eternal. And while his body may now be ashes, his spirit is going to be burning bright forever. That's a beautiful thing. That's a beautiful man. It's a beautiful human being. And the thing about all that sex and drugs and rioting at Rochdale College, well, yeah, there was a lot of that going on. And I endorse it 100%. But Rochdale was full of beautiful people, man. Rochdale was full of the most beautiful people I ever could hope to meet in my entire life. And there's not one person from Rochdale that I regret having met. Not one. Including that little weasel in the Dream Tower film who said, well, there was no education in Rochdale. I mean, even the failures, man, especially the failures, need help. Because they just don't get it. They just don't ever get it. They want things to be delivered. And Rochdale was about, we deliver ourselves. Right now, we're watching the world tremble with fear over the man who's ruined Russia, Putin. He's ruined Russia. He's destroyed Russia in the eyes of the world. And, he's a sick man, and sick people need to be put out of their misery, finally, one way or another. Maybe the Russians will put him out of their misery, because he's causing them a great deal of misery. He's caused them to lose face in the world. He's caused them to lose face with their allies. He's caused them to lose face in so many ways. It's just insane. And he's done more harm in the space of less than a year to Rochdale, to Russia than all of Russia's enemies could have done combined. He's just done terrible damage. And when you look at that, ignore it. Because we can't change these people. So what if the world goes up in flames? It won't be the first time, and it won't be the last. We'll dig ourselves out from the under the ashes. We'll build a better tomorrow. That's what Bobby would say. Bobby, I learned, was a photographer in Vietnam. And he certainly saw the world burning itself up. Perhaps that's why he had so much love in his heart. Because he'd seen what lack of love costs. And it just costs too fucking much, okay? So you're offended by what I said, then be offended. But this is Reg Hartt speaking about the heart, from the heart, about someone I care for deeply, and that someone is my good friend Bobby Naismith, who is now ashes. We're all going to be ashes one day. But, my God, what a magnificent human being he was. And spirits like that don't die. Good night and God bless.